I want to start with Bill Belichick because when free agency happened, day one, Bill Belichick opened up the checkbook. Well, sorry, Bill Belichick opened up Robert Kraft's checkbook and started playing Monopoly.
Got
Like,
a black card.
yeah, like, and to be fair, they had one of the best free agent signings of the year. Like, they signed Matthew Judon off of the Ravens for 4 years, $56 million, and that was a huge payday for Matthew Judon. And he has lived up to that contract in this first year. He had 12 and a half sacks, 14 tackles for a loss, 25 quarterback hits, and 60 total tackles. He was tied seventh in the league for sacks. So, like, he was playing up to that money a lot. Now, on the other side of things, they gave Jonnu Smith 4 years and $50 million. He only has 28 catches and less than 300 yards. Like, they gave him $12.5 million for this year to get less than 300 yards and a single touchdown.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
gave Hunter Henry 3 years and $38 million on the other side of the field for two tight ends, and he has over 600 yards, 50 catches, and 9 TDs. And he's making like significantly less money. Like, he's making like 12 and a half a year. So, like, Bill took a lot of swings here. He missed on some, like, I think he hit on Hunter Henry. I think he hit on Matthew Judon, but he missed on Jonnu Smith, and he also missed on Nelson Aguilar, who got a 2-year, $22 million deal. Only $11 million, but he had 473 yards, 3 TDs. They overpaid for subpar production from Nelson Aguilar, and like, he was decent on the Raiders. Like, that Raiders season was actually quite good for him, but like, consistently, especially on his Eagles career, like, this is about what you should have expected from bruh. Like, like
I didn't want to bring up his Eagles career. Just because, like, bro, when you become a meme because a man saves like what was a baby or something. Like somebody jumped
yeah,
out of it's like somebody jumped out a window and a man caught him like out of a fire and was like, "Yeah, I caught the baby." Unlike Nelson Aguilar for the for the Eagles, like, damn, bro. You know what I mean? So that means like you got to work on them hands. So but I think when it comes to this the predicament that Bill Belichick and them was in, you got to swing for the fences when you got young talent. Yeah, I mean, you want to put the right pieces around them, and if Bill Belichick has been able to do anything right, is get the right pieces that's good enough.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's good enough. It's certain names that people are tossing around the term Hall of Fame simply because Bill Belichick put them in a position to, always, get their stats up. So even when Bill do shit like I trust him. Like, you with that type of experience, you trust him.
I didn't think the Jonnu Smith contract was bad at first. And granted, it's a 4-year contract, so that's kind of one of those, like, it could end up looking better and it's a slow start. And like, it just the production for costs is not great. It's not great. There are some other players in here and there, like on my like best list. I had like Marvin Jones Jr., another wide receiver, for like comparison to Nelson Aguilar, who was at a 2-year, $14 million deal. So he's making about $4 million less a year than Nelson Aguilar. He was easily the most consistent wide receiver on the Jacksonville Jaguars, giving Trevor Lawrence stability. He got like
Yeah,
seriously, he had
yeah.
73 catches, 830 yards, 4 TDs. Like, that was very good value on a team where nothing went right. So like,
Right.
you could have
800
gotten Marvin
yards.
Jones Jr.
Yeah, 800 yards with the Jaguars.
Exactly.
That's not bad.
That's great considering everything they went through.
Right.
Like, so like, when I look at that comparative value for a player like Marvin Jones Jr., you could have paid significantly less for, etc. But it's all hindsight, right? On a similar length of a deal. A guy that I really want to talk about was a guy the Bengals took a massive chance on out of New Orleans, Trey Hendrickson, defensive end. They gave him a 4-year, $60 million deal. This is a huge gamble because, like, Trey Hendrickson, all his career, first 4 years, the first 3 years, relatively middling, and I don't want to be rude about that. But contract year, right? And everybody wants to talk about how players play up to that contract year, right?
Mm-hmm.
He played up to that contract year with the Saints. He got 13 and a half sacks on that contract year. The Saints did not want to pay him, probably because of the things they saw the first 3 years, right? Bengals gave him the bag and it paid off. Like he ended up getting 14 sacks this year, 3 forced fumbles, 12 tackles for a loss, 27 quarterback hits. And like it's still early into a 4 year deal, but it looks like that last year in New Orleans was not a flash in the pan and it was more
Yeah.
of like what we should expect to see to come, double digit DN.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you see progress too. Like when you go to new system, new organization, and you add on to like the momentum that you was already carrying. I mean, shit. I feel like the Bengals is just making like ever since they got rid of Marvin Lewis, they just started just making good decisions. Like they just putting shit together well. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to where you don't get to this position. I mean, without like being able to see shit like that. And I mean, shit, you got you a DN that could get you 14 sacks.
That's huge.
So,
Like
yeah,
everybody's looking for that shit. Like
right,
the
right.
Raiders were still looking for that shit after losing Khalil Mack up until this year when they got Yannick Ngakoue, who gave them 10. And like to be fair, he's on a 2 year, 26 mil. That was another one of my high, like really good free agency signings. Now there are two
I'll say
players.
this too though. I'll say this too though about the Bengals. They draft a lot of Sooners. I don't know if they have somebody like in their front office um that went to OU or what it was, but they draft a lot of OU players. Mixon, Piron, tight ends from back in the day. It's been a lot of OU players that ended up with the Bengals. So I low key fuck with them.
OU is a good like football factory school.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, there are two players, and these two players I think are far and beyond the best free agency signings of the year just for value. And the first one is Cordarrelle Patterson for the Falcons. He was on a 1 year, $3 million deal. He had 618 rush yards, 6 rushing TDs, 550 receiving yards, and 5 receiving TDs. That's like 11 touchdowns and over 1,100 all purpose yards for $3 million.
Yeah.
That shows you
Yeah.
how bad Matt Nagy of a coach was. Like Matt
Yeah.
Nagy ruined his value that much. He goes on a 1 year prove-it deal to the Falcons and puts up otherworldly numbers.
Yeah, I mean, again though, like that's why Matt Nagy doesn't have a job. Right? I mean, one of the key things that we got to pay attention to is like shit. These head coaches is about recognizing and developing talent. Like
Knowing what to
you,
do with it.
right, utilize. I was about to say utilizing talent. That's one of the most underrated, underappreciated. You got to get because it's always about whether or not somebody's fit, and it's like nah, if you got great talent, you got to figure out how to get them in there and make what changes is necessary. And when Matt Nagy just didn't seem up to what I'm saying up to that challenge. So
The second one for me, I'm with you there, is James Conner, who signed with the Arizona Cardinals for like a 1 year,
yeah,
$1.75 million contract. That is ridiculous for what he did this year. He had 750 rush yards and 15 rushing touchdowns. 15 of them on a less than $2 million deal. Another 375 through the air and another 3 touchdowns. Like,
yeah. See, but when he came from 6 touchdowns the season before though, so it's
but that I think he kind of got screwed by that Pittsburgh offensive line. It
yeah,
was really bad. Like they had to redo it this season, right? Because of how bad it was. So like they redid the offensive line and drafted Najee Harris, right? Which Najee Harris is fantastic, good draft pick, love it. Can't say anything negative about him. But James Conner got like a raw end of a stick by running behind a line that couldn't block for anything. And we all knew they couldn't block for anything. Like he made less than $100,000 for each touchdown he scored this season.
yeah. I mean, and he was actually off to a pretty high start, like because what was that back in 2018, 12 touchdowns. So to
Yeah,
go
he
from
was nice.
12 to 4 to 6. You know what I mean? Like that next contract is usually like, we
It's
gotta see
tough.
something. Yeah, we gotta see
Yeah.
something.
He better get paid now though. Like 15 rushing touchdowns. Like he's probably gonna get picked up by somebody. That deal should pay off. Flip side, I got to talk about the worst free agent signing of this year was Kenny Golladay. Yo, 4 years, $72 million for the Giants. And like people will say he was hurt, right? But you got to remember, he played 14 games this season, 14 of 17, and had zero touchdowns for $18 million this
Zero.
season. Zero
Mm,
touchdowns and like 521 yards. He kind of gave you like Nelson Aguilar numbers for $18 million.
yeah.
Like
And
zero.
but I mean, but then again, like receive. It's always hard for me. I'm always the most sympathetic to receivers because they are the most dependent position.
Mm-hmm.
Running backs, they just hand them the ball. Like if they fuck up the handoff, you know what I'm saying, the pitch, like that's a lot, right? But we gotta get I need you to get it 60 yards. You know what I'm saying? And I need it done right. And Danny Dimes just was like just wasn't what it was. You know what I mean? And so at, as much as I'm like, I'm these are the moments where this bad on the behalf of the organization because it's a talent. The whole reason why you brought him there was to be, uh, a weapon for a quarterback that needs weapons. But if everything else ain't right, like you can't just stick somebody in there and be like, all right, well, now you got somebody to throw it to. Everything should be smooth. It's like, no, that's a
I
lot more
feel
issues that
you,
we
but
got to
he
tackle.
got outplayed by Kadarius Toney, who's a rookie. Nah, I'm just leave it at that. Oh,
Because who was the who again though, who was the name? Who was the name?
look, the
What happened
quarterbacks
with
were bad
Juju?
no matter what.
What happened with like I feel like Juju Smith Schuster is a perfect example of like how like wide receivers really have it bad in terms of perception. When Antonio Brown was there, Juju Smith Schuster, great numbers, like
Mm-hmm.
game ball, team MVP. Now what are they doing with Juju? 1 year deals, nigga, get off TikTok. You know what I mean? Like,
Yo, the get off TikTok is real though. Like,
yeah, yeah, like so, like Galladay, like that was the known weapon. So like, hey, who do we got to? Okay, so we gonna make sure he don't go off. But I mean, and that's also not to say that it like he is without any blame. But I do feel like with wide receivers, I always give it. I'm a little bit more sympathetic to them, especially I'm glad when they get their bag. Uh, but and you got to recognize they really dependent in what they do. So
my last one here is Andy Dalton.
mm.
Like there are so many reasons why Andy Dalton was one of the worst free agent pickups of the season. And a lot of them aren't really because of Andy Dalton. That's the worst part. It's like we paid Andy Dalton. We promised to start Andy Dalton, which limited the development of Justin Fields. But also we paid and decided to start Andy Dalton when we already had Nick Foles on our roster. So like it wasn't like we needed an Andy Dalton. Like we already like you was already paying Nick Foles. Like we paid that man Nick Foles to I think play one game this season and then like slice it up with the third stringers, as he says. Like there was just no sense around the Andy Dalton thing. Like this is like a pro Andy Dalton take, but unfortunately, this is an anti Bears take because like
Okay,
once
so you
he's
flipped it because I was making I had a anti Giant. I was anti Giants. I feel like the Giants is your fault.
yeah,
Right.
it's just like I don't got nothing against Andy Dalton, but you spent the 12th pick on a quarterback. You moved up in the draft, gave your next year first round pick. And then you were like, oh, well, Andy Dalton, he's QB1. like, like, like that probably accelerated the firing of Nagy and Pace so much. So those are
I
my
mean, and
best.
that's also why I said that Andy Dalton is not fucking Alex Smith. like, like Justin Fields was not gonna sit behind Andy Dalton and just develop. and get that much better by watching fucking Andy. It just wasn't gonna work like that. Like he need.
I I honestly believe that if Andy Dalton did not get hurt, we would have tried it. Like Matt Nagy would have tried it. Like I just I can't shake the feeling that if Andy Dalton doesn't go down, Matt Nagy definitively would have tried it. Would have tried to ride with them.